Today's episode, When It Feels Like the World is Falling Apart on the Overcoming Graduation podcast, is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/OCG. That's audibletrial.com/OCG. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. I always love to recommend Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, one of my favorite books of all time and probably my favorite audiobook of all time. He's got 2 books in the series and the third one is coming out soon. The voice actor who does the audiobook is absolutely incredible, so I highly, highly recommend this one. If you don't like reading, Audible is a great way to get started. Consuming content from books that you don't have the time or the patience to sit down and read. Like when I started, that was my biggest problem, is why I want to be doing other things. So Audible gave me the opportunity to be able to walk around my apartment, do laundry, do my chores, and listen and consume amazing content. So check it out at audibletrial.com/OCG. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. For anyone who is new to the show, Overcoming Graduation is a podcast where I work to share everything I wished I'd known about life to help you graduate to the next level. In today's episode, this will be an individual episode where I talk about the concept when it feels like the world is falling apart. So just a few weeks ago, I was in Chicago for Podcast Movement 2016 and had a really phenomenal week. I had 3 days at Podcast Movement. We got to go to a wedding. My girlfriend came out to Chicago and we went to her friend's wedding. I had time with my dad and old friends I haven't seen in 2 years. So I had this really phenomenal week. And then when I was going back to the airport, I noticed I was feeling down. My energy was low. I just didn't feel like myself, and all of my thoughts were turning to the negative. I noticed that during the week, I've been watching a lot more of the news, and as we all know, the news is typically more heavily geared towards the negative things going on in the world. And although we may not be consciously paying attention, what I've noticed is that subconsciously, the inputs that we have in our lives have a dramatic effect on how we view the world. As Byron Katie says, your external world is a reflection of your internal world. So the more that we're subconsciously feeding ourselves negative, the easier it is for our subconscious to take that and look for proof in the world. So as I got to the airport, I noticed myself just feeling very scared and closed off. You're watching the news and seeing horrible things going on around the world, seeing a crazy political race and hearing people say all kinds of mean, negative, racist things. And it just seems like, oh my God, what is our country coming to? What is our world coming to? So I have these thoughts swirling around my head. I'm walking through the airport. I'm feeling nervous and scared. I'm feeling suspicious. Having this almost, I need to look over my shoulder at any moment, like what could happen? And this is something that I'm like, this is so weird. This isn't me, but I just feel so unsettled. And normally one of my goals when I travel is to meet someone new. And that was the last thing I wanted to do this day. I wanted to put on my big noise-canceling headphones. I wanted to just walk through, get on the plane, be unhappy, and be left alone. Which sounds funny, but there's times where we're like, you know what? I'm pissed. Just leave me alone. I want to be pissed. So I get to my gate. I see that I've still got about 40 minutes before we're taking off, and I decide to go grab some food. I figured I'll grab some snacks and some drinks at one of those little Hudson News stores. And I walk in, and I go over to look at the drink rack, and I find myself just staring at it. Not actually looking at the drinks, just staring at one drink, not moving. And I was so wrapped up in negative thoughts and feeling truly like the world was just falling apart. Like, man, things are so different, and they're not like they used to be, and it's not safe anymore. And all these ideas that do not define my life, but at this moment felt very true to me. So I'm feeling lost, I'm feeling scared, I'm just thinking about all these negative possibilities of things that could potentially happen if I travel to this place, or if this person got elected. I'm having all of these horrible scenarios playing out in my head, and all of a sudden I hear a meow. A tiny little squeaky meow, and my head pops up, and suddenly I'm just pulled out of the depths of my hypothetical despair pool that I decided to dive into. And my head pops up, and I look around, and I'm like, was that a cat? And I hear it again. So I start like looking around this store, and I finally come around a thing full of those like Chicago gift cards, like welcome to Chicago, and that you can send postcards. Couldn't think of the word, but I come around this rack of postcards and I see this woman holding a cat carrier. And I said, "Oh, do you have a cat?" And she said, "Oh, yeah." And I could tell she probably had been dealing with a lot of angry people because this cat was meowing incessantly, and she probably was used to them hearing, "Oh, do you have a cat? Could you keep it quiet? Could you, I'm trying to fly here." And so I said, "Oh, I grew up with cats. I love cats." And she goes, "Oh, really?" So she turns the cat carrier towards me. Her face brightened up at that moment that she saw that I wasn't someone that was here to criticize or tell her to keep the animal quiet, that I was just curious about the animal. She turns the carrier towards me, and I see this little tiny face. And it was a ginger cat, so we were already on the same page. But it's a tiny little kitten. It's meowing nonstop because it's scared, and it's looking around all wide-eyed like, what in God's name is going on? And so immediately after seeing this cat and after hearing the meow, I got pulled out of this, like I said, hypothetical despair pool that I was creating and deciding on to swim around in and dive deep into, and I'm just focused on this animal that's there in front of me. And then I said, "Oh, that's so cute. Where'd you get them from? Or what? Where are you guys coming from?" And I put my finger towards the little grate, and the cat's reaching its paw out. So it's just an adorable little animal. And the woman goes, "Well, actually, I was traveling in Puerto Rico for vacation, and I was at this restaurant, and we looked down on the street next to us, and there's this tiny little sick, not healthy looking kitten." And so I asked the waiter about the kitten, and they said, "Oh, yeah, it's been here for a couple days. I don't think it has an owner, and honestly, I don't think it's going to make it another day." And so the woman decided to save this little kitten. So she picked it up, she brought it to the vet, got its shots, got it taken care of. Then she had to jump through a ton of different hoops in order to be able to bring an animal back from Puerto Rico to the United States. She went through all of this during her vacation so that this animal could be saved. And she said to me, "I just saw him there, and I couldn't just go by without doing something about it." And those words at a Hudson News in Chicago O'Hare, middle of the day, from a woman I just met, it might seem insignificant to some, but to me it was so profound, because when we feel like the world is falling apart, there are still all of these people every day doing small, medium, big, and massive good things. And we're so quick to ignore those and focus on the bad and then look for validation for a belief that we have that the world is bad. So it's much easier to look at this thing that confirms what we believe rather than to look for a contradictory truth about a better world. Even though there are horrible things going on in the world, there are atrocities that happen, and there really are evil people doing bad things to people. In my experience, I've been very fortunate to travel as much as I have to 16 different countries, and I'm only 26 years old. And what I've seen when I've gone to some very dangerous places, in fact, the most dangerous city in the world, in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, just last year, when I went to these places, I didn't see a city full of angry, scary, mean people. I didn't see tons of people looking to hurt and attack others. What I saw were people trying to live, people trying to make a better lives for themselves and for their family and their friends, people trying to just get by, to survive life, to try and understand, to get some clarity on why the hell they're here. And what I've seen in my travels is that we really are not as different as we think. And our desires in life are really not as far off as we might think when we just look at the world through the lens of a movie or the news. So what I've seen is people who are looking to live better, to be better, and to gain clarity on why they're here and look to make and discover whatever it is their unique passion is so that they can make their unique impact on the world. And that comes in all different shapes and sizes. That comes in all different packages and wrappers. And like, these dreams don't always come in a nice little box. These dreams are sometimes really hard to get to. Sometimes they're over a big old fence. Sometimes they're behind a really tightly locked door. And so some people's dreams are to have a small, respectable farm. Some people's dreams are to have a multi-billion-dollar company like a Google and be the next Elon Musk or the next Steve Jobs. But what I've seen in my travels is that people, and this is what I believe in my heart, is that most people are good. Most people are trying. Most people are just working to figure things out as they go day to day. But when we focus on inputs, and I say inputs meaning the things that we're taking in, when we focus on inputs like the news, that'll get down to that subconscious level. And I heard a quote once that said, our subconscious does not know fact from fiction. It will take whatever we give it and look for validation and proof. So if we keep hearing the world's falling apart and there's danger and there's hate and there's violence, we're going to look for proof of that. And then we're going to try to react to that and attach emotion to that, which is generally fear and lack of trust and lack of adventure. Like we let go of that adventurous spirit because we're telling ourselves it's too dangerous right now. We've got to wait till things calm down. So this brings up a really interesting conversation about our attention. And in my day job, I had a conversation with a really amazing coworker of mine, and he talked about our attention. Now, some personal development like gurus out there, and I'm saying self-named gurus, will just say, just focus on the good, block out all the bad, ignore the bad, and just focus on the good. I think that's not only dangerous, but I don't think that's really possible, because when you try to push things away and hide from them or hide them from yourself, it's like putting a blanket over a big mess and telling yourself the mess isn't there. That's not true. That's not real. You know the mess is there, and in your mind, that's taking up space of saying, I know it's covered, but I know it's there. I know I haven't dealt with it. That's like closing up that extremely dirty closet and never cleaning it out and saying like, oh, the closet's clean, but you know it's not. And hiding from those truths, I think, is dangerous and detrimental. So when it comes to our attention, oftentimes, like, one, to build on that first point, we can't be hiding from the truths that we know. I think it's much more powerful and much more impactful to dive into the shit. It's to dive into the mess and to pick things apart and pull things out and clean things up, because when you actually clean up the mess, then you can get down to your truth and you can create space for the good things in your life. When we just try to avoid it, that mess can get bigger and bigger and bigger, or we keep throwing things into that closet and it gets messier and messier and messier, and we're just waiting for that point where things fall apart, when the closet is overflowing and explodes, when the pile that we kept building has taken up our whole house, and it's like that show Hoarders. So diving into what we actually are dealing with is so powerful. Then on the other hand, when we talk about attention, so one, don't ignore the difficult things in your life or the difficult things in your mind. Diving into them, going into them head on, will often help you gain more peace than pushing them away ever will, because you're dealing with the issue, not just trying to ignore it. Next, what my coworker at my day job said to me was, if I tell you to focus on the color red right now, your brain will immediately highlight all of the red in the room. So as you're listening to this right now, if you focus on all of the red, and guys, if you're driving, please focus on driving. I don't want anybody losing focus, but you can also do this activity after when you're safely parked. But right now, if you're able, focus on all of the red around you. Now, as you look around the scenery, the room, wherever you're at, you're going to see red just pop out, and your eye is going to be drawn to the red because you've told your mind to look for it. If I tell you to now switch gears and look for all the blue, all of a sudden the blue comes out. Blue is highlighted. Blue is very clear. Now, if you noticed, in this moment, you didn't suddenly go blind to everything else in the room. You didn't just stop seeing yellow and stop seeing purple. Those are all still there. You're still aware of them, but your attention and focus was on one specific color. This same concept is so true and powerful for the way that we view the world, because you don't need to block out and never see any bad and never expose yourself to bad. And, oh, if I hear about the bad things going on, it'll tear me apart. No, that doesn't need to be the reality. So when it comes to attention, where you focus is up to you. We live in an amazing age where we have the ability to access information from all over the world, from all throughout history, from all different sources and sites and all of that. But oftentimes we'll just default to whatever's closest or whatever's in front of us. It's easy to go to the news. It's easy to go to these things where we just flip a channel and pick this thing up. But if those inputs aren't bringing the quality of aren't bringing up your quality of life, I would challenge you to change those inputs. If you want to see people that are living in the way that I described earlier, like looking to live a better life, looking to make a difference, looking to find their passion, like they're really working to make this unique impact in the world, go look for that proof. Because if you want to show yourself it's possible to live an exciting, engaging life, you need to introduce yourself to the content that validates that belief for you. So that can be TED Talks, that can be books, that can be podcasts, that can be meeting, engaging, and interesting people that are different than the people you generally surround yourself with. Because when the world feels like it's falling apart, I don't believe it's the world. It's our internal world, and it's the way that we're choosing to see what's outside of us. Even in some of the worst tragedies in our history, there are people that have looked to help. There are people that have looked to take the pain in their life and make it into good. During my time at Penn State, we have an event called the Penn State Dance Marathon, which benefits the Four Diamonds Fund, raising money for pediatric cancer treatment and research. And it's one of the best things, I believe, at Penn State, one of my favorite things about being at school. And we have what's called canning trips, where people go out, they literally are holding little empty coffee cans and raising money and collecting donations outside stores, on street corners, etc. And during one of my years at school, there was a freshman girl who had just joined a sorority, and they were leaving for a canning trip. There was an ice storm, and the car flipped over, and the other people in the car were all okay, but this girl passed away. And it was a horrible tragedy. It was this painful thing, and it was so, like, no one understood. This was one of those amazing girls. I didn't know her personally, but everyone who talked about her said she was the most wonderful person, the brightest smile. She loved Thon. She was loved to be helping kids with cancer through this difficult time. So why her? Why this? Now, our family very easily could have said, well, God hates us and the world hates us and life sucks, and we're just going to live that from now on. But what they chose to do was celebrate the life that she had and the time that she had, and they created a fund in her name to help people in school who embody the principles and the characteristics and the values that their daughter had. So even in the worst tragedy this family's probably ever experienced in losing their daughter, which is something I can't even begin to imagine, they took that pain and tried to turn it into something good. And they did some amazing work with it. It's still around today. And it's just such a beautiful example of ways that we can respond when it seems like the world is falling apart. So to come back to that original story where that woman saved this little kitten from Puerto Rico, what I think is interesting is in my own life, there's times where I'll do, many of you have listened to the episode Monologue Dialogue just a few episodes ago, where I'll have negative conversations and build them and build them and build them until they go from me having a disagreement with a person at work about the way they said something to, like I've said, a Jason Bourne style fight scene. So I'm very quick to take a negative and expect more negatives to come from it, and then think about all the bad things that could happen. If you think back to college, for example, when you thought about going and talking to that girl or that guy, so I'd see her and be like, oh, yeah, I should go talk to her. And then, well, what if she said no? And then what if she threw a drink in my face? And then what if she had a boyfriend and he came and wanted to fight me? And what if, and it's like all of a sudden this idea, just an idea, turned into me somehow getting like my ass whooped, getting a drink thrown in my face, and then getting like thrown out of a club. Like, it's ridiculous, but no one questions that when we go, oh yeah, what about this, this, and this? But then when you try to push it a positive way, people go like, what are you, like, why? Yeah, like that's going to happen. But if we're so quick to assume that the negative is true, again, that's just an attention piece like we discussed earlier. That's where you're choosing to push your attention, and that's also a reality you're choosing to live in based off the stories and the past. You're not choosing to create a new reality or embrace the possibility of the unknown, because it feels much safer to say, I know how things are going to go if I talk to so-and-so, versus putting yourself out there, which can be so much more gratifying and rewarding, even just trying and experimenting with life. but we would rather stay in our comfort zone. I can't tell you how many girls I didn't talk to because I was afraid of what might happen. And I created a scary reality so that it was almost like, oh, it'd be ridiculous to talk to her because think about all that crazy stuff. So when you think about flipping that on its ear, and instead of taking the negatives down this horrible path, let's take the positives down another path. And let's consider the ripple effects of small actions, because so often people will say, you know what? What's the point? If I don't have $1 million to donate, if I can't dedicate my entire life to this thing, what difference is it going to make? What does it matter if I help one person? What does it matter if I help one little kitten in the street of Puerto Rico? It's not going to make a difference. And guys, I mean, you know it, I know, we hear this stuff all the time. Sometimes we'll even find ourselves saying it, and it feels awful and we don't like it, but we're not looking for different proof. And let's flip this around, all right? Let's take that example of that woman with that cat. Let's say she brings it home, and it brings her joy knowing that she made a difference for another creature on this planet. But then let's say she decides to give it to a friend because their young kid is having a rough time at school and they think a pet would be great for him. And let's say he gets this pet and he was dealing with depression and fear and stress, but this pet gives him a whole new reason for being, that he is this creature to care for that relies on him. And then they grow up together, and this animal gives him confidence, and then he's able to connect more with people at school, and he makes his own friends. Now his positive energy is enabling him to touch other people's lives and creating friendships, and then those people can go on to do great things. And the ripple effects that could be positive, I mean, hey, if we took it even further, let's say that motivated him and inspired him to find joy and to realize that his life does have purpose and meaning. Something as small as a cute little kitten, that it can take even less than that. It can just be a walk. It can be a trip. There are things that can trigger these amazing events, but unless we're willing to go out and see and experiment, we won't give ourselves the opportunity to be there to have those feelings. So if this guy goes on and he gets confidence, and then he starts participating more in school, and he's more engaged, and he starts making friends, and he grows, and he starts to take off in his life, and eventually could be the person that through his learnings there was able to discover the cure for cancer, because early in his life something reminded him that all lives have meaning and everyone's here for a reason, and he just needed a reminder of that at a young age to help push him through. Now, some of you might be listening and go, well, that's ridiculous. That wouldn't happen. And you're right. It probably wouldn't, but probably is not definitely. And probably wouldn't happen doesn't mean it's impossible. And for all we know, that very well could be what happens. And if I knew that woman, I'd love to keep in touch and see where it goes. But even if it just brought her joy knowing that she had taken care of that animal, even if her story just goes on to touch other people's lives like it's touched my own, that's what life is about, is connecting and sharing these stories and trying to make a difference in the world, working to make a difference in the world. Even when you don't know if it will make a difference, it's making the effort, because when we give up on trying to make a difference, that's when we can guarantee it won't happen. But when you keep trying, you may never see the results that happen off the differences that you make, off giving someone $1, off giving someone a hug, off sharing a story with someone, offering to listen to someone who needs to vent. You may never see the results, but working to try and make that difference is one of the most important things we can do, because life feels so lonely when we're caught up in all of our things and just caught up inside of ourselves. When we believe the world's falling apart, it feels safer to go inside, and we don't like it and it doesn't feel good, but let me just stay in my apartment and not talk to anyone and not talk to anything and not try to do anything, because that'll keep me safe. Guys, life is way too fucking short for that. Life is way too short to be sitting in the protected safe walls hoping that nothing happens. Because for all we know, a meteor could fucking hit my apartment right now. Like, yeah, I'm safe in my apartment, but we don't know what life has to bring. We don't know what life has to offer, and the only way to learn about what it has to offer is to get out there. So to deal with those feelings of when the world feels like it's falling apart, I'm going to challenge you to, one, start looking for examples of people who are living in a way that is working to make a difference for the world and for the people around them. Two, look for someone to help. Actually look to connect and make a difference for someone, because when you take a moment to connect with another person, even a complete stranger, sometimes especially a complete stranger, and show them that you care in a moment where they need it, to show them that you're there for them, to show them that they're valued as a human being, because that can be one of the biggest things you can do. Sometimes people just need a reminder. Sometimes people haven't felt love maybe their entire lives, and just seeing one person who cares, one person who smiles, one person who helps them up when they fall, sometimes that's all it takes, guys. So in this story of a little kitten being saved from Puerto Rico by this wonderful woman, my life was touched in that moment. That story was an amazingly powerful metaphor for me in my life, and especially in that moment in my life. And it was a really fantastic reminder that sometimes when we're feeling the shittiest and we feel like there's nothing good going on, it just takes turning our head and following a little squeaky meow to see that there is so much beauty, and it's right around the corner if we're willing to take a few steps to see it. So thank you guys all for listening today. It is an honor and a pleasure to share this time with you. I know that there's times where I wonder, I'm like, are people going to want to hear me share these stories? Are people going to want to hear me just talk on a mic for 15, 20, an hour, or like whatever it is? But I know that many of you are listening, and anybody who's gotten to this point is still listening, and I appreciate the hell out of it, because for me, this is one of my big efforts to share messages that can last and that can touch people's lives. And to know you guys are listening and to see you commenting and sharing, that means the world to me, because this has been an important thing for me in helping me get through the difficult challenges in my life and losing my mom to cancer. And so hearing and seeing your feedback, having you guys reach out to me, it means the world. I can't say enough about it, guys. So thank you all so much for being a part of this. And if this episode was of value to you, I would be so honored if you'd share it with your friends and following. That's one of the best things that you can do to help spread this message, is to share it on your social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you're on social media. That means the world to me. And if you would like to learn more about the OCG community, you can check out overcominggraduation.com or look up Overcoming Graduation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can reach out to me at Overcoming Grad on Twitter. If you have any questions, recommendations, things you'd like me to do an episode on, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you'd like to reach out to me directly to learn more about my coaching program, to talk about the episodes, even just to share something funny that happened to you or a great story that you'd like to share, it might even be something that I'll share on the show if it's something that fits the Overcoming Graduation message. So you can reach out to me at brian@overcominggraduation.com. And if you'd like to get access to your free book bonuses from my #1 Amazon best-selling book, The First Step, you can visit thefirststepgift.com to download the Rapid Language Learning Starter Kit, the Passion/Dream Job Finder Questionnaire, and the Overcoming Graduation interview bundle for free. And you'll also get to see some videos from My Team Triumph, and 10% of every book sold is donated to My Team Triumph to help them make dreams come true. So thank you guys so much for listening today. Love you all. Really, really, it is an honor to be a part of your lives and to share this time with you. So thank you guys again, and I'll be talking to you again real soon. Talking to you again real soon. Talking to you again real soon. Talking to you again real soon.